What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Around the Felt. It's time to continue our series and talk about the Minnesota Vikings, their 2024 season, how their offseason's gone thus far in 2025. Obviously, going to be a lot of quarterback talk here. But first, Reagan, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I'm ready to talk about the Vikings and how they're about to get Aaron Rodgers as their new quarterback. Nah, I'm kidding about that.
Oh, they might. They might.
But no, I'm genuinely excited. This was, a team that we both were significantly wrong about. And I'll be the first one to eat crow here. I mean, to me, this season was an A+ based off of
A+,
expectations.
huh?
Yes, because honestly, I didn't think there was a world where they could win 14 games. I mean, it's unfortunate they got bounced in the first round, but coming into the season, I was expecting this team to be a 5-win team, especially after, they lose JJ McCarthy. And it's like, all right, like we've seen what Sam Darnold is. He's nothing special. We saw his stint with the Jets, his stint with the Panthers. It's like, all right, great. Like, what is this team's ceiling really? Like, I would have said, maybe 6-7 wins, but it's like, then you're really not setting yourself up for a premium pick next year. So the Vikings completely made me eat crow. I mean, Kevin O'Connell is an amazing coach. I mean, you could argue. I mean, I'm not going to get too crazy that he's the best, but you could argue he's a top 5 coach, if not top 3, behind like right now, like Reed and Sirianni are like 2 of the most impressive coaches in the league, just because they've got the hardware.
I don't know, dude. But let's not sit here and say Sirianni's a better coach than Sean McVay.
Yeah, McVay's in there as well. Like those guys obviously have the hardware, but O'Connell, for like, you could argue he's the best coach without a ring right now.
Yes, you certainly could. Yeah, I actually would agree with you there.
You might have to say he's the best. I mean, I don't know if there's many coaches that can, lose their starting quarterback and bring in Sam Darnold and win 14 games and, the toughest division in football. They completely took care of business outside of the Lions and the Rams. Those were the only 2 teams they lost to.
Yeah.
And they lost to them both twice. That's another funny wrinkle. 14-0 against the NFL and, 0-4 against the Rams and the Lions. But
that is ironic, isn't it?
It's just super impressive. The offense was humming. The defense obviously was a lot better than I expected. So, maybe some people are like, all right, how can you get an A+ if you didn't win a Super Bowl or, even go far in the playoffs? But it was just like, I didn't expect anything from this team. I thought this team had top 10 pick written all over them and was going to be a building year for McCarthy. And after that, I was like, hey, this might be top 5 team written all over it. So I am completely eating crow, and they blew up my expectations completely.
I get that point, Reagan. It is funny looking back, like doing the recap video after we did our like Vikings season outlook for 2024, and we had so many Vikings fans in our comments like giving a shit because we were not very high in this team. I think it was just because we weren't necessarily confident in Sam Darnold based on what we've seen from him throughout his career. I ultimately gave the Vikings a B+. 14 wins. Awesome season. It came down to week 18 with a chance to get the number 1 seed. Very impressive. Kevin O'Connell, the man, like you're very confident. You have your coach in place. You extended him. That's great. It was an amazing regular season, but then Sam Darnold choked when it mattered most. He was terrible against Detroit in week 18 for a chance to get the bye, and then he was not good against the Rams. They got their asses kicked by the Rams, which I don't think a lot of people expected. I think I was like, I had the Vikings winning, but it wouldn't have shocked me if the Rams won. But the fashion in which the Rams beat their ass in the playoffs just left a sour taste in my mouth, which is why I can't give them in that A range that you're giving them. But you look at this team offensively, I love it. You got 2 awesome tackles. You got the best receiver in football, arguably, in Jefferson. Jordan Addison has been everything you could ask you could be as your second receiver, taking him in the first round. You were a juggernaut without even having Hawkinson for a large part of the season. And, Aaron Jones had the most rushing yards in his career, and he's been on a lot of really good Packers offenses. So that's also a positive. You bring back Aaron Jones now. I like the move. Defensively, you were a solid defense, 5th in scoring. I mean, that's great. 2nd in rush. I really like their defensive line right now as it's constructed, not even including the offseason additions we're going to get into, right? But, your edge rushing trio of Grenard, who was your big signing last year from Houston, he was awesome. Van Ginkel, it was awesome. And then Dallas Turner, who you took in the first round and moved up for, was also great. So
I'm excited for what he can become.
Yeah, dude. And he, like, what was nice is they didn't need him to step in and be like their go-to guy right away. And, you know, like you didn't think Van Ginkel was going to get you 11 and a half sacks, right? And you just took Dallas Turner at 17 overall and moved up. But hey, it worked out really well. And you're confident in that group. I think, you know, probably the biggest flaw here was the secondary. But, you know, still, they were good enough to win 14 games on the defensive side of the ball. So really, no complaints from me for this Viking season. It was definitely a fun season if you're a Minnesota fan. The way
I do wonder like what Minnesota fans feel about that.
Yeah,
because
it was a great
that it's like
season,
they had no expectations. It's like we didn't have expectations, and then or maybe some of them did, but like to go out that way where it's like, hey, we won 14 games and we were a first round exit. I guess it's similar to Detroit fans because it's two cities that have never won a Super Bowl. I mean, I guess Minnesota's been in the playoffs a lot more, so it's harder for them because they've had so many seasons where they've had great regular seasons, gone on to the playoffs, and then just continued to lose and, not make the big game. So I would imagine that's tough, but also it's like you didn't expect to be there anyway, so it was kind of house money. But I'd be curious, like, any Vikings fans that are listening, like, please let us know, like, what was your, like, what do you kind of view this season as? I'd love to hear their thoughts because I don't know a lot of Vikings fans personally, but I really am curious, like, kind of where they're at with this whole season.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Vikings fan, it's hard to be upset, but like I said, it's the way the season ended, which just kind of is like all year you got really excited for what this team could do, and then you just got your asses kicked, to end the season. Like, and Darnold was trash, and now Darnold's gone, So let's get in the offseason here, Reagan. Big loss, obviously, Sam Darnold. When that door opened up in Seattle, he was going to take that. He was not going to go back having J.J. McCarthy breathing down his neck. You did add a lot of solid pieces to free agency. You re-signed Byron Murphy, which I thought was really smart. He's your best corner. And then they really addressed the trenches. I'm seeing a lot of people are putting the Vikings up there for potentially the best offseason in terms of what they did in free agency. Will Fries from the Colts, another solid addition to that offensive line, which is already great. Jonathan Allen on the interior. I mean, you didn't expect him to sneak loose from Washington, but he did. You had Javon Hargrave as well. You had Ryan Kelly in the offensive line. You just traded for Jordan Mason just last night. That's a solid back that you have behind Aaron Jones. Now, like, could you have just taken a running back in this loaded class? Yeah. But, Mason looked good for San Francisco last year, so I think you're comfortable with your running back room with him and Aaron Jones. It really is going to come down to J.J. McCarthy for this team next year, unless, hey, apparently they're talking about Aaron Rodgers potentially being their guy to come in here, and that's kind of why the Giants and the Steelers are playing the waiting game, waiting for Rodgers, because Rodgers is kind of waiting for Minnesota to reach out to him and really fulfill the Brett Favre career arc, which would be very ironic. But, I think if you can bring in Aaron Rodgers, it's a team that could definitely make a run. But I don't know. After you just saw with the Jets, you just took J.J. McCarthy 10th overall. He had a redshirt year with the injury, but he's a smart dude. Like, I think they should roll with J.J. McCarthy.
I mean, I would want them to. Otherwise, what's the point of taking a guy that early? I don't understand. Like, and also, at the end of the day, if you're going to point to any of these quarterbacks that were taken in that draft, the one that's actually known as a quote-unquote winner is J.J. McCarthy. Like, Penix obviously had a good season with Washington his last year, but J.J. McCarthy is just a winner. Like, he had one of the best records of all time as a quarterback in the NCAA.
Yeah.
So I fully expect him to step in and continue to win. And the roster around him is sick. So it's not even like, yeah, well, he's always had stacked rosters around him. Yeah, he has. And he's going to have another stacked roster around him. So I would totally roll the dice with him. I think he's obviously more athletic than Sam Darnold. Not that Sam Darnold's not athletic, but I think he adds an even bigger dimension with his legs as well. That opens up the playbook even more for O'Connell. So I would totally roll with him with those weapons and the offensive line that they just built around him. I mean, what's the point of drafting a guy that early if you're not going to give him a chance? And obviously, like, if you do go out and get Rodgers, and yeah, maybe it's in a mentorship role, but if you decide to roll with the dice, like with Rodgers over McCarthy, I can't imagine that being a positive thing for McCarthy going forward, being like, yeah, like, Darnold stepped in and I had to watch that all year where, hey, is this guy going to take my job? Or are they going to end up paying him long-term? Now he's finally gone and it's my job. Oh, wait, even though I'm healthy, they still don't trust me and have enough faith in me. So they're bringing in a veteran legend in Aaron Rodgers, who showed last year he really doesn't have much left in the tank, but they're still like, hey, we want to bring him in anyway to compete with me. And it's like, I haven't even had a chance to prove myself. So I think that's just bad for the confidence. I would say roll with McCarthy. I mean, I don't even know. I would say McCarthy's ceiling is way higher anyway than Rodgers' ceiling at this point. It's just Rodgers, I guess, would be the safer option. But that's also because McCarthy, we haven't seen anything. I think that'd be very foolish unless you're bringing him in as a backup. But I think you can't bring in Aaron Rodgers as a backup because that's not the type. That's the type of backup that is like competing with you and you're always looking over your shoulder. It's not like bringing in Joe Flacco. Yeah,
that won't happen because Rodgers is going to take a starting job in Pittsburgh or New York.
That's what I mean. So I would much rather see them bring in I think they definitely should bring in a veteran because, if McCarthy does miss time or the knee flares up or for whatever reason, I would say a guy like Joe Flacco, we've seen in the mentorship role on the market still, would be a name I would love to see them bring in.
Yeah, it's a good spot.
A guy we've seen step in with Cleveland a couple years ago and, keep their offense humming and was able to get them into the playoffs. So that would be a guy I would definitely be interested in them bring in, where you don't have to look over your shoulder, but he is a guy that, if he does have to play, like he can step right in with a high powered offense and put up big numbers.
Yeah, and based on the options that are currently left, like I would like Flacco in that room much more so than Jameis Winston.
Yeah, because Winston's a good locker room guy, but I don't know if both guys were in the same situation too. When both put up big numbers, but one guy, was winning games, putting up big numbers. The other guy won a few games, but they weren't winning games. And I know the Browns obviously took a step back, but still, I would say Flacco definitely had a bigger impact in that offense. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I mean, in the draft, it'll definitely be interesting. I mean, obviously this team still has some
pick
holes.
Number 24. I mean, you look at this team though, and it's like, I feel pretty good about where they're at in the trenches. Like, could they add another interior offensive lineman? Sure. But I love their defensive line right now. It's pretty goddamn loaded. I think they probably attack the secondary. Yes. And I think their number one target should be Malachi Starks. Harrison Smith is getting up there in age now. It's probably his last year in Minnesota, I'd assume. Maybe he's got one more left after if Minnesota wants to bring him back. But I think Malachi Starks from Georgia would be a home run for Minnesota here and really be the guy that can help take this defense to even the next level, because you need to address the secondary, given you were the 28th ranked passing defense last year. I also think, I know I mentioned this for the Packers, but Jahdae Barron in that range from Texas, I think could make a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's not a bad one either. And I think they're similar to Detroit, where you're in a spot where, maybe they're not Super Bowl contenders, but they're in a spot where they don't have a lot of holes. They have the luxury to either trade back, or they have the luxury where, hey, we're going to get the best player available. I mean, offensively, they're a team that you really don't need to do anything.
Really? I mean what are you going to get in offense?
I don't think they would, because if in the off chance, I don't think Gentry falls, but if in the off chance he was there, it's like still, I don't know, you go trade for Jordan Mason and you bring back Aaron Jones. That tells me they're not worried about the running back position. And with all the money they spent in the offseason, it tells me that pick is defense for sure. And, if you're going to point anywhere, it's either the linebackers or the secondary. So I would think, a corner or a safety, like you said, or trading back is always a great option as well.
Yeah, the running back thing, like I thought a guy like Travion Henderson would have been a good fit, given his ability and how that would pair with Aaron Jones. Like Henderson, more of a home run threat. I thought that would have been a really fun addition to this offense. It's a bit of a luxury pick, though, but the fact they just traded for Jordan Mason, I think, kind of takes that out. I don't think you're going to go running back in the first round here, get where this team's at, right? Like they have a ton of talent, and offensively, it's like you got Jefferson, you got Addison. Like, yeah, I like Jalen Nailor as a third guy. He had some pretty solid games. You know what I mean? So I don't think
I knew one Vikings fan that was trying to say he was a number one he was trying to say we have 3 number 1 wide receivers, and I'm like, hey, I'll entertain Addison, but let's not. I'm not going to entertain.
I'll entertain Addison. Like, okay, like on another team, could it be a number 1? Yeah, you could.
But Jalen Nailor, yeah, I'm like, all right, you're getting a little crazy here, buddy. I don't know if Jalen Nailor is the number 1 on any team, let alone a number 2 on any team.
No, certainly not. But he's a solid number 3. Like, I don't think receiver is. I mean, that just seems like a luxury pick. If you want to really help JJ McCarthy, could they go receiver like a Matthew Golden, a Luther Burden? Like,
I mean, they're in a position where at least they're, best available as an option.
Yeah, is it in the cards? Like, would you consider receiver there, even though you have 2 first-round picks at receiver already?
I wouldn't, but if like one of those guys starts to fall, I mean, Tet would be more interesting to me, just because they don't really have that big body receiver. Like,
Yeah, I just think there's no way he falls to
but
24. Like I can
but
see
I'm
him
just
falling
saying,
outside the top
if
10,
he
but
did, he brings something that Addison and Jefferson do not bring, and that's being just a big body red zone threat. I mean, he's 6'5". I know Addison's what, like 5'9", 5'10", and Jefferson's what, like 6 foot. So they really don't have that
yeah.
true big body guy. So that would bring a whole nother dynamic, especially in the red zone. But that's more of a luxury pick. But that would be the one I'd consider. Or if you are going to go wide receiver, get like a big body guy. But also that's kind of what Hawkinson's supposed to be at the tight end position. I mean, he's supposed
Yeah.
to be the guy that you
Yeah.
can kind of play all over the field. So I don't know. But you ready to get Drock in here?
Yeah, let's get Drock in here for some questions. The best part of the show.
What up?
I knew you'd like that, Drock.
All right. My question for y'all. I know you guys talked about it a little bit. Give me some more detail on it. Should the Vikings pursue signing veteran quarterback Aaron Rodgers, considering his age and recent injury history, or should they focus on developing young talent?
I'm fully on board with Reagan here. I think Joe Flacco is the guy you want to bring in. If McCarthy's not ready, at least you've seen Flacco win games recently, even given his age, like get a team like Cleveland to the postseason. And it's also like the dude's won a Super Bowl. He's a great mentor. I think that makes a lot more sense. You just took McCarthy 10th overall. Let's see what you got here, right? Darnold made the decision for you. You were in a tough spot. So we bring him back or not? With Seattle opening up that position, you know what? You didn't have to make that difficult decision, right? So now you're in this situation. You got to roll with the young guy. I know Rodgers has the pedigree. He's got the MVPs. He had a ring, but he's 41 years old. Like, let's be honest. Play the young buck. Let's see what he's got.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the only reason I'd want to see Rodgers go there is just because I think it'd be funny of the story arc. And then, as a Jet fan, that would make me real nervous that Jordan Love's coming to the Jets 15 years down the road. But outside of the story arc, it really doesn't make sense to me. It's just like, why would you? And they also, let's not forget, they traded up with the Jets to move up one spot to take him too. So it's not, they clearly wanted him bad. So to me, you don't make that move if you're willing to trade up to get a quarterback the year prior and give up assets, because they could have totally been like, we're not totally sold on him. We're fine just sitting here at 11. And if McCarthy's there, we'll get him. But they clearly thought, hey, we need to get up to 10 to get him. And that tells me that you got to let this guy develop. And I just can't imagine bringing in any sort of competition in the slightest is good for his development, unless you truly are worried about his knee and you think it's a bigger issue, which all reports from I've heard is that he'll be good to go. I haven't heard anything saying that it's, more of an issue than expected. So that would be the only reason where it's like, all right, if he's set to miss some time or may not be ready to start the year, it's like, all right, well, we have this sick roster. Like we can't sit around and have some backup play. It's like, all right, maybe we do bring in Rodgers and, as a mentor type and to try to win us some games. And if he's hot, we keep letting him play. And if it's, not what we expected, then we go to McCarthy. But I don't think that needs to be a thought at all, unless McCarthy's not going to be 100%, which he will be.
Yeah. And it's also, if you're going to bring in Rodgers, it's probably a 1-year thing. But, you got McCarthy on this rookie deal. That's why you can add all these players that you added and had a great free agency building up the trenches in front of McCarthy and then on the defensive side of the ball. I really like where this team's at right now. Let's play McCarthy. You got the rookie contract. You continue to add around him. Hey, even we just talked about it. Maybe you go receiver. You get a little luxury pick here, but McCarthy's got a ton of weapons to play with, and that's really how you help him get to that next level and solidify him as your franchise quarterback moving forward.
And question from Walmart. Fuck the Vikings. Who's the most underrated free agency signing?
Overrated free agency signing?
Underrated.
The most underrated signing. I'm going to go Ryan Kelly, the center that they got from the Colts, because I think his experience in this league, and he's been a high quality center for, maybe he's not the same player now, but he's been a very good center in this league for a long time. And I think if you do go the McCarthy route, having a veteran center that he can work with, that can help the offensive line kind of pick up blitzes and shift their protection, I think could be very beneficial for a young quarterback.
Yeah, and I'm going to say it's technically not free agency. It's a trade, but I still think it's part of it. But I think going out and trading for Jordan Mason is very underrated. I mean, we saw what he was able to do behind the 49ers offensive line this year. And a lot of people could be like, that's the system, blah, 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 blah. But he definitely showed a lot of flashes to me. They do bring back Aaron Jones on the 2-year deal, but he's not the long-term answer. But from all the flashes Mason showed me, I think that could be an underrated move. That could be a nice 1-2 punch. And hey, Aaron Jones has proven that he misses time every year. So it's not like it's guaranteed. It's his backfield. I mean, the running back position, there are no guarantees outside of like, Saquon Barkley getting $20 million a year with the Eagles. There's not many running backs that are paid a lot of money. So if Jordan Mason's got the hot hand and steals that backfield, they don't know Aaron Jones anything. So I think that one's underrated and can prove to be a very nice addition for them this offseason.
Yeah, it seems, probably likely that Jones will have a hamstring issue at some point. He has had hamstring injuries throughout his career, so it's definitely good insurance policy move. I probably would have just taken a running back on day 2, honestly, like in this historic class.
I mean, hey man, he definitely showed some flashes last year. He's got some juice.
He does have some juice. He was a fantasy hero for quite the while.
But yeah, I think that basically wraps it up. I mean, Vikings fans, like I said earlier, let us know in the comments. I mean, what you think they should do in the draft. Are you satisfied with JJ McCarthy? Is he the answer? I mean, do you want Aaron Rodgers? And kind of where was your feeling last season? Like, are you happy with last season? Are you disappointed? I mean, obviously you're disappointed they lost in the playoffs, but like, were you just playing with house money? Like, where was your feeling? I don't know enough Vikings fans, so I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, me as well. We got berated before the season, so berate us again.
Yes, please. Hopefully that same guy, we might have to hit him up and be like, bro, check out our new video. We're curious your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Be like, yo, dude, Naylor was solid this year. Potential number 1.
Yeah, but thanks for tuning in, everybody.